Welcome back. In today's video segment, we're going to take the board that we drilled our holes into yesterday, and we're going to turn it into this board here that's got our pockets, our dowel alignment holes, and the outline of the cribbage board cut. So this step actually starts off on your laptop. You'll need to take the USB drive from our controller computer and save your toolpath on this USB drive. All right, here we are looking at my computer desktop. I'm gonna plug that CNC USB drive in. You can see a little message pops up down here and tells me I've got my D drive plugged in now. Then I'm gonna come over here to the File Explorer icon and I'll open that up. Mine just happens to show up right at the top of my recent files. So I've got my cribbage board base. If yours doesn't show up at the top, you might come up to this quick access search and search for your file name. So I'm going to take the cribbage board base file and I right clicked on it, and then I'm going to say send to, and I want to send it to the CNC router's D drive. And that should be it. It's there now. I didn't do anything to confirm it, so you can tell me I got trust issues if you want, but I'm going to come to the CNC router's D drive here and just check it out. There is my cribbage board base.tap file. If you're saved as an NC file versus a TAP file, that's fine. Either one will work for us when we return to the router. Now that you've got your toolpath saved to the CNC tool drive, we can plug that back into our USB port on the desktop, and we can go about putting our project on the table. Now, I've already moved the router out of the way. If you get here and the router is covering this lower left-hand corner, you'll move it around by using the Y, X, and Z keys on the keyboard here. You can see the router moves very slowly. If you're going to move the router, just make sure that you don't drive it past the ends of these rails. There's tabs on either side, and we want to try and keep it from colliding with those tabs because that could throw off the X, Y, and possibly Z locations. Now I'm going to take my board, and when I put it on here, I want to pay special attention to which side was the top. Remember, we put our name on the bottom. And I also want to align this so that the grain is going in the Y-axis. So the grain lines are running up and down. They'll be running this direction on the router table. Now, there is some sawdust on here from the last student, so I'm going to take a bench brush and I'll dust that surface off so my project can sit flat. I'll slide my board in tight against the guide blocks on the X and Y axes. And then I'll take a screwdriver and 4 screws. I'm using Kreg screws because they've got large heads. You can see that'll help hold our project in place. And I'm going to fix this to the router table. So now my project is mounted on the table. I can see that it's snug down nice and flat. It's not going to move around. If your project isn't secure on the table, don't move forward at this point. Come find your instructor and get some help. If this moves while it's routering, it's going to ruin your board and you'll be back to square one. Now, the next thing I want to do, just to save some time, is I want to find out what bit is in the router. If it's got the 1/8 inch bit in it, I'm going to run the program to drill these holes first. If it's got the 1/2 inch bit in it, I'm going to run my program to take and do the pockets, the dowel hole, and cut around the outside edge. I can see the 1/8 inch drill bit is in there, and the 1/2 inch drill bit, this really wide one, is sitting on the work table. So I'm going to run the drilling cycle first. To find that drilling cycle, I'm going to come over to the laptop or the desktop computer here. I'm going to go to load G code, and then I'll find the CNC router, the E drive, and then I'm going to load the one called Drilling Toolpath Base for NCC. I'm going to move the camera a little closer so you can see what's going on here. on the screen, I've got a preview of what it's going to cut out, and I can see all the little holes in here. I can also see here it says drilling tool path for base, and it's using a bit with a diameter of 0.125 inches. And so all those things tell me that I've got the correct file here. Now the next thing I want to do is I'm going to hit go to zeros. And you can see these crosshairs move on my screen. The router, you also heard in the background, has moved to the lower corner. So we want to confirm on our screen the crosshairs in the lower left-hand corner. And if we look at the project on the table, that router bit should be sitting just above the lower left-hand corner right here. And it is. So that tells me the program is zeroed out. If it doesn't go to that location or the screen doesn't look right, again, come find your instructor. The last thing I want to do is make sure this bit is zeroed out. So I'm going to use the keys to take and drive my router so the bit is now off of my project and just hanging out over the table. In the middle of the screen here, there's a button that says Auto Z Setter. In just a second, I'm going to click that. But before I do, I'm going to pull out this Auto Z Setter plate. This is located back here on the router. I'm going to set this metal plate underneath my drill bit. I'll hit the Auto Z Setter button. And it's slowly going to lower the router down. Now what this is going to do is set the Z location to 0 so it knows how deep to cut into my project. And this moves very slowly, so I'm down on my knees now, holding the plate flat so that the tip of that drill bit makes contact with the metal plate. Right, there it hit. I've now confirmed it knows where the X and Y zero are and the Z zero. At this point, I can put the plate back, and I am ready to put my glasses on and run the program. So I'm going to go to the green cycle start button. I'll click it once. Down here it asks me if I have the correct tool in, and I do, so I'll click it again. And then let's run. With that done, we can move the router, switch the bit, and put our new program in to cut the pockets. Hey, I've changed camera angles because I need to change the router bit. So to do that, I'm going to grab these 2 wrenches off of the cart. They should be hanging on a nail on this side. And I'm going to put the wrenches on the collet up here on my drill bit. Or on my, yeah, that's my drill bit that's in my router, my 1/8 inch drill bit. I'm going to take that out and put this 1/2 inch flat end mill bit in. So I'm going to put one of my wrenches up high on my collet. That's locking it in. That's as high as I can go. This wrench that I just put on here is actually touching the base of the machine. Then I'm going to grab the other wrench and I'll put it down as low as I can go on that collet, but still grabbing it. And then I want to turn this bottom wrench towards the outside edge of my machine. Once I've broken that tension and I've loosened the nut up, I can take and just thread it off by hand. It does hit a second point of resistance right towards the end, so I'm going to grab the wrench one more time and I'll spin it again with the handle coming around towards the left side of the machine. So there is my 1/8 inch bit that I drilled all my holes with. I'm going to set that safely up on the router table. Now I'll grab this 1/2 inch bit, and what I want to do before I put this in is make sure that the flutes are just about touching the collet. So if we look at the back end, the end of the router bit should be even with the end of the collet. Now I'll put that up into the router. I'll start threading it in by hand. This time I'm going from the right to left, so the opposite direction. And then to tighten this down at the end, I'll grab my wrench and I'll snug it down with a fair amount of pressure. because we don't want that slipping loose while we're cutting. Well, I'm back to standing up and I'm ready to do my second milling operation. I've got the correct router bit in here. I need to run the auto Z-setter one more time. So I'm going to move this example project out of the way. That will allow me to move the router again over to the flat part of the table so I can hit that auto Z-set button. I'll move that by using the X and Y keys on my keyboard. Once I can see the routers over the top section of the flat table, not my project, I'll put that plate down. I'll come back and click the Auto Z-Setter button in the middle of my screen. And then I'll move back over here and get myself in position to align the plate. Again, this does move fairly slow. You shouldn't have to worry about your fingers getting caught in here, as long as you're paying attention to the bit. All right, now my last step is to go to the computer. I'll use the load G-code button to open up my second file and cut that out. Again, I always like to confirm before I cut the picture in the center of the screen here. Looks like the file I'm intending to get. And I like to check that the X and Y are at their zeros. So I'm going to hit the go to zeros button. And it looks like my router is lined up properly. One thing I didn't mention before I ran the first program is should something go wrong during this operation, there is a stop button on the screen that you could click with your mouse. There's also a red emergency stop button down in the front of the computer unit that you could push in to immediately shut the router down. I'm going to put my glasses on and we will run this next program. I hit cycle start once, it's asking me if the correct tool is in there, so I will hit it again. Well, it looks like this operation is done. Now, I don't need to change the bit this time. It's come forward to the bit change position. So I'm gonna move the router back and unscrew it next. Alright, so now that I've got this done, I'm gonna leave these pieces on the side. I'll use my trim router to cut through this excess material so it doesn't break off, and we'll cover that in the next video. So clean up after yourself and go ahead and get to work.